Hey girl, what's up?
Hey.
Let's talk about it. Can we please talk about it? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Can we please talk about it? Let's talk about it.
Well, hello, and welcome to today's edition of Can We Please Have a Talk? I'm Malin Pat Britton, your host, and I'll be coming to you weekly with things that pertain to our everyday living. Thank you so much for joining me in part 4 of my series, America, What's Really Going On? Now, last week, my guest, Mrs. Janelle Cox-Bey, was here to share what it was like for her and for children who suffer with emotional abandonment issues. The conversation went a little beyond what I had anticipated, so I decided to let the cameras to continue to roll. Here once again is Mrs. Janelle Cox-Bey. We're back now. Earlier you made mention or you talked about the reason why so many children are being impacted with the social with the abandonment issue is because they live in impoverished area. One of the things I do know is that it seems that some of us are heavily impacted by this and others, are able to overcome. Why do you think that is?
Well, primarily because it's innate in all of us. So we're going to have some survivors. We're going to have some leaders. And it totally depends on the mindset of the person and how they're being impacted. So it could be a teacher, it could be a minister, it can be an athletic coach, someone that is pouring into their lives and they already have it in them to do better. And so you just have that one or two people that's coaching you along. Those are the ones that really, are inspired to go further and do great things.
One of the stories that kind of stand out to me as we're talking about this is Lorraine Hansberry's story, the play that she wrote, A Raisin in the Sun. And I just remember Mama Lena saying, what has changed? What is changing? She says, during our day, we, freedom was the thing that we fought for. Nowadays, it seems like everyone is fighting for money. It's all about material things. And I want to believe that that's one of the reasons why we are seeing what we're seeing now is because it's all about things. Children are literally putting guns to people's head to get a car they didn't earn. They're beating children or bullying children out of their shoes that parents have worked hard to get for them. It seems like we're chasing after a dream or we're chasing after something that in the end really doesn't amount to much of anything. And I think when we go back to focusing on what's really important in life, I think then we will then begin to see the changes that we need to see within ourselves and within our children. Let's talk about what we see happening in society and how that correlates to what we see happening with our children.
Well, going back to what you said earlier, I was born in the late 60s. We were fighting for freedom and we came together with one focus. Mm-hmm. And so we knew that we had to love one another. We had to support one another. We had to be there for one another. And then once I grew up, even though I wasn't fighting the same fight my mother fought, I still dealt with a little racism. I got a little more. And in my mind, when I have my children, I don't want them to have to deal with what I had to deal with. And so what happens? We give our children more. And so I'm looking at this generation and the population that I'm serving, though they're giving their children all these things, they don't have their basic needs met. Yeah. And so their focus is all wrong. These gym shoes, this hair, these nails. So it's a place of that everyone is in a perplexed place. Go ahead.
And I was just thinking about the turmoil that we seem to be in when we are fighting. We talked about how our parents fought for freedom, and that was the main thing that we wanted as a Black people. We wanted freedom. We wanted justice. We wanted to be treated equally. But the problem I'm seeing now is that we're now fighting against one another. And maybe that's another issue that needs to be addressed all by itself, is that we as a people have got to come together. And as you say, we need to learn how to support one another. We have got to get back to the thing that is most important. And that is showing and displaying love to one another, doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, loving your neighbors as you would love yourselves. I cannot preach that enough. If it sounds like I'm a preacher, I'm not a preacher, but I cannot stress enough how important it is that we begin to come together. And maybe if we could just start with our own people, our own community, maybe then we can also see the changes that we need. Because why do we have so much black on black crime? What is going on as a people that we have lost sight of who we are?
Is back to that place of not loving yourself. So if you don't love yourself, you don't know how to love yourself, then how can you love someone else? Our people remind me so much of the Israelites. And, they were set free. And once they got past all of what they went through for Moses to get them set free, once the stress was off of them, then they went back to that perplexed place, and they went back to that slave mentality, and they wanted that back. And so that's what I see in our people. I see we don't know who we are. And that's what we lack. We always go back. And a lot of the behaviors is,
I guess that's a whole nother issue all by itself.
That's
but once again, I'm getting back to mothers. That's where we have to understand our place as a mother, how important it is for us to begin to nurture and foster those things that are going to yield the product that is necessary for their children, for our children to be productive citizens, and to, be, something that, we don't have to be ashamed of. We've got to. And so maybe that's the other flip side of all of this, is to once again, not just foster, love, but be able to build us up as a people. We've got to do something. And so maybe we're looking at two different areas that need to be addressed. And so, hopefully we can get to that place. When
I've had family groups over the years, and I'm talking to the parents, I'm talking to the mothers, and sometimes the fathers, a lot of times they are so minimal in understanding what their children's needs are, because they're lacking. When you really get to talking to them, and you really get to the core of what's going on in the family dynamics, it's so generational. It was nothing for me to see a family that was in the projects. And I would have a mother in the projects when I was working for Department of Children and Family Service.
I'm somewhat losing you.
And her only goal in life, when I was talking to the mothers and fathers, I would have fathers sometimes in my groups. And what I found is they really were lacking from generational. So you're talking generations of people that have not got the nurture, have not got the love, all type of, in environmental situations, social emotional abuse, lack. And, I remember in child welfare, when I worked with several of my families, they were in the projects, they were in the projects, and their goal was not to get out of the projects. Their goal was to get an apartment in the projects complex. So sometimes I would go visit a mother with her children, and there was generations of her families there. Her grandmother was in an apartment two buildings over. Her mother was in another apartment. Her sister was in another apartment. So you're talking about perpetual a certain type of mentality. And so when that child is born, they're growing up in an environment full of violence, full of poverty. You already know growing up, you're going to either end up dead or in jail. That's an understanding.
And it's sad that it's come to that point, though. It is so sad. I just remember I grew up in the projects. We grew up in Stateway Gardens for the first 9 years of my life. And then my mother, she moved us out. There was down there on 35th Street and 35th and Federal. And my mother was determined that this is not where we're going to live the rest of our lives. So I'm so grateful that, God gave my mother the wherewithal to be determined enough to come out of that and to see that there was a possibility that she could get out of that. And so I'm so grateful to have my mother, to have that push to get out. And so that's the other thing. We don't have as a people, we're missing that, because that was one thing. We used to have a lot of pride in the way we dress. Well, even though we didn't have a lot, you were made to feel like that you had a lot, and what you had, you kept it, and you kept it well. Just because you were, in an impoverished area didn't mean that you didn't sweep down the stairs. You didn't try to hang up your best curtains, so to speak. You made sure that things around you were at least up to par as best as you could. And you didn't let, things fall by the wayside. It was all about, investing in the children, making sure children, that they were taught certain things. We've got to get back to that. I cannot stress it enough as mothers, how we have got to get back to that. So we're going to take a break at this time. And so don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Janelle Cox-Bey. I am a social worker here at Thornton Township High School. I have been a social worker here for the past 26 years. In today's climate, especially with the pandemic, one of the most prevalent issues plaguing our students and society is anxiety. According to the National Institute of Health, anxiety disorders are the most common mental illnesses in the United States today. Anxiety disorders affect 25.1% of children between the ages of 13 and 18 years old. Research shows that untreated children with anxiety disorders perform poorly in school and is the leading gateway to depression and substance abuse. The number one contribution to anxiety today is the residuals of the effect of COVID-19. The fact that students were quarantined, they were on lockdown, they couldn't get out, e-learning, and deaths. Lots of our students lost lots of family members and friends during this time. 3 of the contributing factors to anxiety with our youth is social media, number 1, community violence, and standardized testing. Test anxiety is one of the greatest anxiety contributors.
My name is Julius Patterson. I am one of the school social workers here at Thornton Township High School. The signs of anxiety include, but are not limited to, changes in behavior, trouble sleeping or concentrating, chronic physical fatigue, school avoidance, and poor school performance. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding resources, please contact us via email. All the social workers' emails, me and Ms. Cox-Bey, numbers are readily available on the research packet provided and on the school website.
We've got to find a way to come together, and whether it's individually in our community, if it's starting in the home, in which I believe if we could start at the home, if we could really get mothers to see how important it is for them to start nurturing and fostering their children, I think then and only then will we begin to see the change. But we got to start with mama. We got to start somewhere.
That was what I was going to kick in. You said it. You took the words right out of my mouth. It's the lack of nurturing. I feel that I spend most of my time in my office nurturing. All I do all day long is parents. And believe it or not, sometimes I have to parent their parents. And I have to help them to remember, if they're even close to my age or a little younger than me, remind them of what it was when we were growing up. And so I have to remind them of those things. But sometimes, like you said, the mother, particularly if we're talking about the mom, she's dealing with so much abandonment. She's dealing with so much. How can I give you something that I don't have?
You know what? And here's the problem. All of us need to be loved. We all need that. I just never will forget when I was studying, had my child psychology course, and it talked about how these babies, when there was a study conducted where children who were not touched, how they die. We all need to be loved. We need to feel that. But once again, we have to be careful. And I'm speaking particularly to young mothers. I'm talking to mothers, period, for single moms. But you got to be careful who you allow in your home. Because too many children are dying at the hands of mama's, lover or whatever. And we've got to be very, very careful. We've got to develop that discerning spirit. And how do you develop it other than having a relationship with God? We want to cut God out of everything because we want to do what we want to do when we want to do it. And we don't want to hear, those things because we don't want our conscience to be pricked.
So it's going back to one place. And that's love. And that is the one thing that if I can't do anything else, I mean, the law says I can't pray in the school system. I can't talk about God. But I can pray. I can give them love. I can, show them that nurturing component that they're missing. We can't talk about if I can get my kids to a place where they can actually hear me and expose what they're feeling, because it takes a long time sometimes for someone to expose what's really going on. I've had
that's true.
I've worked with since their freshman year of high school, and I didn't really know what was really going on with them until they got to their junior year of high school, because they've been taught, they've been trained, don't say anything outside of my house. What goes on in my house stays in my house. That's my business. Yeah. And so when you're talking to them, that there's parts of the story that's missing. And so it's so important for the ones that are working with this population is you got to be in prayer. You got to ask God, what is going on with this child? Because sometimes they're not even able to tell you, too afraid to tell you what's really going on.
I know we're cutting short on time, but I just think that this conversation once again is so needed, and I'm prayerful as well that those students that you come in contact with, that you are able to make a major difference in their life, particularly when they aren't getting the help from family members. Especially when you got family members that aren't necessarily prepared or equipped to help some of these children that are dealing with some of the things that they're dealing with, because as you say, they're dealing with their own emotional issues. So
I can say this, and I'll say this on a positive note as we're ending out. I have touched many lives over the years. I've seen many success stories. I've seen kids to college that would not have went to college to get out of their environments. I've seen my students right now for my teen parent program. I just saw my one of my first babies just graduate from grad school.
Awesome.
So, and
awesome.
His mother was in a very broken home. Mother was an alcoholic, very abusive, dealt with a lot of abuse, all the things we're talking about right now, but she was able to escape. And she went downstate and took her son, and he actually grew up in a college environment. So he just finished his master's. So I've seen some great things happen. God has truly blessed.
Awesome.
And,
awesome.
If you just give them that love and you give them that nurturing and they're open to it.
No, but I'm so glad you brought that up. How can we teach love when we don't know what love is ourselves?
Absolutely.
So
we have a lot of wounded adults that work with kids, and it's a lot of adults that need to really look at themselves and work on their own social emotional issues.
Well, I'm hoping that before it's all said and done, that I am able to form some type of town hall meeting or something, either around Mother's Day, something where we can pull mothers together so that they can, get some type of start somewhere to get them the help that they need.
They need it. And you know what? I've come across some mothers that's willing. Some are just saying, hey, I don't know what to do. I need your help. I can't get her or him out the bed. He refuses to obey me. He's extremely disrespectful. And sometimes they're doing the best that they can.
Yeah,
So
this is true.
I believe, like you said, if we could just come together, even if we start off with a small group, because once you start with a small group and one person say something about it was good, they'll bring another person. Everybody is looking for help and everyone is looking for answers. So we have to get back to old school community.
I agree.
We got to get back to the way the church used to be when the church did go out and reach out. We got to go back to those centers where the kids can go after school and get, the physical exercise, the groups, the tutorial services, those things.
How to work with one another, just learning how to, and that I'm so glad you also pointed that out as well, because when you don't know how to not even necessarily communicate with people, but just how to work with people, establishing that relationship and communication is definitely needed. And when you are missing that social component in life, and especially with the shutdown, with the pandemic, it is what it is. We're going to have to find a way to get back to get them not necessarily introduced to society, but somewhere where they can begin to develop and grow and learn how to work with people and to love. As you said, they need to learn how to love one another. And we're definitely lacking that. So
yes. Everybody is selfish. Everybody's after what they want for themselves. And so when you have a society of selfish people, back in the day, it wasn't like that. If mama wasn't home, grandma was home, you can go next door and get what you needed. Yeah. It was a community of people that just loved you. They took care of you. You remember, you go down the block, you do something wrong. It was home before you got there. So we talk to one another. I mean, how many of us live in communities and we don't even know our next door neighbors? Like you said,
everybody is all in their own little hole.
Yep.
Nobody's trying to, necessarily come together to be helpful, because there was a point in time when we were coming up in my neighborhood, there were 2 women on our block who would definitely, will watch, I want to say watchdogs, but they definitely made sure your parents knew what was going on while they were working. And so we do need to do that. And you dare say anything to anyone's child now, it's like, you're asking to get your throat cut. You don't, so, we've got to understand where, how that works well for us if we would just be, open to it. We've got to find a solution to what's going on. And I know that change, people don't want to necessarily change. Changes can be uncomfortable sometimes, but sometimes change is needed. And we sometimes need to go back to that old time way. There's nothing wrong with the old time way. It got us from where we are today to, from where we were then to where we are today. So if it worked then, why can't we use some of those things now, So I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to join me. And I'm hoping and praying that this does spark not only a conversation, but it will inspire people to want to do better, to do something more, and to change their environment. We do. I know that drug abuse and alcohol abuse, all of that does play a part into what's going on. Poverty, all of that plays a role. But
the key thing is this. That is just a byproduct of pain.
Okay.
Drug, alcohol abuse, killing, hurting one another, it's a byproduct of pain.
So we got to deal with that pain. We're going to have to go into the core of the pain of what's caught, why people are so angry and so hurt and in so much pain. So maybe that's what we need to address. And maybe I'll talk about that on the show, at a later time. But once again, thank you so much for joining and sharing your insight. Is there any last word that you want to give us before you leave?
Sure. We all need each other. And we all have to stand in the gap for one another in order for us to do better and help our community be better and help our people to be better. We gotta stick together. We gotta come out of our comfort zone, and we gotta look at ourselves and see who we are, and that's the only way you can really help someone else.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And those are very powerful words. And I hope that you all take heed. And once again, Ms. Cox-Bey, thank you so much for joining us. From the stage play Mama's Place comes this 5-part series, Untold Truth of a Mother's Love. When Does Hell End? This Thing Called Love, An Unusual Storm, and Storm of All Storms. Part 1 of this saga takes you on the journey of a widowed mom of 5 who is struggling to love a child conceived under unwelcoming circumstances. With the assistance of her God-fearing godmother, she's determined to beat the odds and save him from the streets. This true-to-life, heartfelt story renders pearls of wisdom while ministering truth and gives great revelation to raising children. This series heightened as the mother is forced to face her own personal issues and when does hell end? After having suffered years of an abusive marriage, abandonment from her closest friend, she experiences the supreme blow when the man who raped and caused her son's death escapes punishment. The story is brought full circle in part 3 of this series entitled This Thing Called Love. Here's where this mother will be tested above all and discover what love is truly about. Part 4 of this series leads readers on a journey through an unusual storm which uncovers a 38-year-old secret her parents carried to their grave. Part 5 ends the saga with the storm of all storms. She learns of a horrible trick played to destroy her relationship with the man who asked for a hand in marriage. Although the news was enough to hurl her to a place of despair, she weathers the storm and discovers all storms are not to her detriment. Ultimately, this storm will unveil truth and lead her to a man who will change her life forever. To get your copy, go to www.divinitybookpress.com, or for ebooks, go to amazon.com. Books on audio will be available soon. Before I go, I want to thank my guest, Miss Janelle Cox-Bey, for sharing her experience with us. I especially want to thank you for tuning in. Meantime, please weigh in, America. What do you think is really going on with the state of our children? Feel free to post your comments. I look forward to them. To purchase your copy of America, What's Really Going On, or the Mama's Place series, please go to www.divinitybookpress.com. If you know of a young mother who may need a little encouragement in her journey, please feel free to purchase a copy as a gift. To get notices of upcoming videos, please register on my page. Also, if you enjoyed this piece, please share the link. Until next time, peace and blessings to you and yours.
Hey girl, what's up?
Hey, let's talk about it. Can we please talk about it? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Can we please talk about it? Let's talk